Welcome, everybody. My name is Sarah Purdon from Martello, and welcome to IT Connections. This is the first in our weekly series that we're launching, and the intention behind this series is to help you keep connected to the IT tools and trends that are going to help you out in these sort of challenging times. Today with me, I have Ryan Towner, who is the president of Towner Communications Systems, and I also have Dave Spence, who is Martello's own product manager. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. I want to kind of get straight to it. So it's really no secret right now that around the globe, these past few months specifically, we're seeing really dramatic changes in the way that companies are doing business. So today, I think I just want to talk about some of those challenges that people are facing. And Ryan, get some real-time information from you about the challenges that you're seeing when it comes to unified communication delivery. And I also want to sort of look at some of the practical technical tips and tricks that we could possibly be employing right now to deliver better service quality. So let's get started with you, Ryan. Are you able to tell me a little bit about Towner, what it is that your company and customers have been experiencing these past few months with the shift to remote work?
Sure. Yeah, be happy to. We're a primarily small IT shared services type of company located in the States in Missouri, and primarily service small to medium. We do have a few large customers, and a lot of what we've seen is, nothing like it, right? There's no comparison to this situation over the past few months compared to anything that anybody can remember for as long as they've been around. So
it was just like flipping a switch, right? Like it was just a sudden everybody home, right? Like you said, there's no comparison in our lifetime for sure.
No, but so one of the things that we had obviously a lot of customers that called us, contacted us, reached out to us that we need help. They have to completely refigure out how to conduct business that they're used to doing face to face, not face to face, and have to do it in a very short period of time. So we ourselves were having to also deal with it as well. So we're figuring
you guys are you guys are like, so you're doing the same thing and you're trying to sort of help other people do the same thing, right?
So we're classified as essential. So we did get a little bit of relief there, but not every business is fortunate like that, that not every business had the opportunity to do that. But we still had to figure it out because we didn't know what tomorrow was going to bring, didn't know what next week was going to bring. I mean, it was hour by hour. So one of the things that we just turned on overnight, for a lot of our customers is making sure that they were aware that they could deploy remotely working and getting their phone calls, which is, a primary source of business and primary source of revenue for many businesses still today. Like talk about email, texting, and all that stuff, but
not always.
There's still going to be somebody's going to pick up the phone call. So how, the challenge for our customers was relatively simple. For a lot of them, it was just a matter of figuring out what each system, was going, how we could make that happen for them. Getting them their phone calls first and foremost. Like that was nothing. We didn't do anything else for, weeks.
Like we think we're so advanced or whatever, but that is still an incredibly big need, right? Are most of your customers like on-prem or cloud? Like what's sort of the balance of what you're dealing with?
We have a pretty good balance of each. We've been doing, installing cloud systems for 20 years. But it wasn't called cloud back then. There was just hooking up a PRI to a system and hanging phones off of it. But it's still the same principle, same thing that people do today. It's just they can't touch any of the equipment. So we have a pretty good mix from just a handful of phones up to thousands. And some customers have private cloud, that they've built within their data center. We help them do that. Some of them want, that still premise system, and then some are early adopters and want to go straight to cloud. So we have a pretty good mix of all of those. It's unique challenges for each one of them, trying to get mobile or calls outside because there's a lot of factors that go into play. trunking, do they have the ability to get calls at home? Do they have service there? Do they have internet or, cell service, things like that. We were talking, this has been weeks back, we've been in business almost 75 years. And in the first quarter, we sold more Power Bricks than we had in decades.
Yeah.
I mean, because people they don't have, PoE, the ability to have those remote phones working at home. So, there was a big run on Power Bricks, and cords, and everybody was trying to scrounge, to find them. It was very, very different. Every single day was trying to help customers.
Yeah, just new challenges, figuring out what the day is going to bring, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You had mentioned that yesterday or whatever, when we had our sort of pre-call or whatever. And you had talked a little bit so in terms of different tools that you might be using. So you're talking about trying to ramp up, trying to get things out. What types of tools does Towner sort of employ to set themselves apart from the competition? Like you're talking about, making sure the customer's satisfied, that sort of thing. Could you maybe expand a little bit on that as to what tools you guys are using that you find can sort of give you a bit of competitive advantage?
Yeah. So we're primarily a Mitel shop. That's most of what the product and vendor that we have chosen for a long time. We deploy a lot of Mitel tools that they've put in our hands to use. So we use the teleworker tool quite a bit. It's often a first go-to whenever a customer's having an issue or a problem. What are we seeing? Because that can be something that we don't necessarily have to go on site to help customer with. We can troubleshoot it remotely and at least get the basics figured out before we have to take it to the next level. Obviously, we use Wireshark a lot on converged networks, where you've got data and voice, video now more than ever, all running on the same wire.
Yeah.
You have to be able to pull all of that information apart and chop it up to see what's going on. So Wireshark's a big one for us. And then we use Mitel Performance Analytics, the MPA from Martello, with a lot of customers as well. Extremely handy because it has a great view, dashboard view. For us, we've used it for years, that it tells us a lot about what's going on, gives us a good overview, but then it also allows us to be, proactive. And you can't be reactive except if you have a shutdown of the entire country and the entire world. I guess they have to be reactive there, but if you could have been proactive, that would have been better, right? So MPA tool really enables us to do a lot of that with our larger customers and kind of get that high level of overview. And then we use also the UC Score tool for a lot of our cloud deployments for small customers. It's really, really nice because you don't know what you don't know. So, a customer, whenever you're remotely selling, whenever you're selling to anyone, anywhere, and you can't physically go look at everything that's going on a network, they may have a hub, something lost, forgotten that, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Well, some of those tools that you can deploy very easily, one UC Score is one of them that lets us get a nice overview. It's easy for the customer to do, for them to run in a few minutes, and us to get at least a glimpse and start to put together a picture of a network. It's extremely helpful and so important for cloud because everybody's been burned by a cloud provider probably by now at least one time, or has a story to tell. So everything matters on keeping that quality top. That's, if you have a bad call, that's death by 1,000 cuts kind of a thing. It doesn't work. So
and what we're going to do, I've just sort of been taking notes or whatever while we're talking, and so we'll share some of these sort of tips or whatever out with everybody, especially sort of that link to ucscore.com. Dave, you've been unusually quiet, so can you maybe
Yeah, we had a chat yesterday, Ryan, and I really thought it was interesting, your take on, all of the MSPs and the partners that are out there. There's a big 800-pound gorilla in the room, right? It's the RingCentrals and the 8x8s of the world. They're everywhere. And I thought we had an interesting conversation yesterday about your experience with the true retail offer, and what's been your experience with those true retail cloud offers?
Sure. It's a lot of customers, today, this has been around, you have an educated buyer, right? It's so easy for anybody in 10 seconds to go pop on the internet, go look at something, research, find information about them. So a lot of times you're going to, have those type of try before you buy. Those big players are going to try and hook you with free stuff, read the fine print. But so it's easy for them to be a first step for a lot of customers, small customers, as well as large ones, to dip their toes in the water. But there's a huge difference in that retail multi-tenant cloud. And in today's world, I think people truly need to ask themselves, is that okay for me? If what you're truly getting. Today, we sell Mitel's Flex product that's private, and a lot of customers are really taking a second look at doing that, having probably been burned by a retail cloud offer before. And in MPA, you get all of those tools right at your fingertips out of the box with it. So Mitel and Martello, set us up for success with our customers, and that's key for us, because it's all about quality. So
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. Like Dave, maybe you can sort of expand a little bit on that, and like talking about monitoring for UC Health and some of the ways that you can sort of enhance that sort of end user experience. So Ryan had sort of talked about being proactive instead of reactive, right? So it's obviously there's situations where you have to scramble and you are reactive, but in terms of proactive like UC Health monitoring, can you maybe expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really that's what, this discussion's coming down to is proactive versus reactive. For the last 20 years, MSPs like, Towner, they've been in the business of reaction. I'm going to react to a customer problem. They find it first, and then I'm going to fix it. And I think that, our industry has completely changed now. There's an expectation of that proactive, where my MSP is monitoring the service that they're providing to me. I'm paying for the service. I don't want to worry about my telephony. I don't want to worry about these problems. I've got my own challenges, especially in today's world. Those proactive tools that MPA or Mitel Performance Analytics, Martello can provide, I think is really the key. And, as we talked about off the lid, everybody all of a sudden had to go home. And, a lot of companies didn't have the infrastructure in place. And so now all of a sudden your people with their teleworker phones or their Zoom calls or their My Team meetings, that traffic is competing on their networks and on their home networks with the Netflix and their kids who are playing video games, right? So everybody's seen this challenge. Everybody's had this challenge. And, for managed service partners, you have to find a way to make sure that service is going to be delivered. And I think that, voice is it can be extremely sensitive to things like packet loss and jitter and round trip time. And with the tools that we have in place and, with that single pane of glass that we provide, you can see in real time when a conversation is starting to degrade. And some people probably wouldn't notice right away when there's a little bit of latency and, your voice quality isn't going to degrade right away. But we give Ryan and Towner and partners the ability to see that ahead of time and to make adjustments. Things like, application prioritization at the edge. These are things that we can do, and you can do with a few clicks of your mouse. And I think that's really where we are now, is that proactive, real-time monitoring. And again, being able to tell let your customers know that they're having a problem before they know they're having a problem. And that's where the value comes.
Because it's like once you get that call, it's like you're just backtracking, right?
Yeah, it's a bad taste. As soon as they have to make that call, it's, I'm having to do something, right?
By that time, you're already behind.
Well, this is it. Like you're just sort of playing catch up at that point and trying to kind of firefight and figure out, where that issue is. Like when it comes to sort of troubleshooting and pinpointing that issue, like that can be a laborious task too, right? Like how can that sort of process be streamlined a little bit more?
Yeah, so with, Mitel Performance Analytics, we have that single pane of glass, but there's also some really intuitive reports that we can run. So we have an advanced VQ report that you can have delivered to your mailbox every morning. You can run it ad hoc, and it will give you a KPI-based voice quality score. So as I said, some customers may be a little bit more tolerant to, a little bit lower quality of voice, but some, especially in the contact center space where they're talking to their customers, where, transactions are happening, you need to have that experience to be, completely crystal clear. So we can deliver into Ryan's inbox the ability to report VQ by subnet, for example, and that can really, help you troubleshoot and help you dive into figuring out where the problem is, and a lot quicker than having to fire up Wireshark and having to run trace routes in your network. In that same report, we also can divide your voice quality reports by external and internal calls, by teleworker or on-net and off-net calls. So just to help, I can drill down a lot quicker, and instead of sending a technician to site to run a trace route or to go with a Wireshark, have this report come in and, again, quickly diagnose and address issues that we can provide by analyzing the real-time data that's coming into our system.
Well, and you mentioned there too, right? Like sending a technician to site, right? Like right now, that is in many sort of, in many areas, that is just not an option. So specifically right now, that's not an option, right? Doing those kind of truck rolls or whatever, but also too, like when, times aren't necessarily like this, that costs you money, it's time out of pocket. It's just to be able to reduce that can have a really big impact for sure, right?
Something that we're also doing now, which is synthetic transactions. So what we can also provide for Ryan and the MSPs is running transactions behind the scenes at different times of the day. So we can schedule synthetic SIP transactions to be happening in your network at different times of the day. So maybe, you have a partner or a customer that's complaining that every day at about 3 o'clock, the service starts to degrade a little bit. Well, why don't we run some synthetic transactions behind the scenes? You don't have to reach out to the customer. There's nothing you need to set up on the customer's location. It can all be done from inside that single pane of glass. And again, it's going to give you some insights into potential, choke points in the network at different times of the day. So there's just little bits of, troubleshooting tools that we can do. And this synthetic transaction, again, is something that's new. We think is going to be extremely successful. And again, reducing the amount of times you have to send a truck, especially when you can't send a truck.
Yeah. And we all notice too, like on our, working remotely now, like you do notice, like I notice, 9 o'clock or whatever is not a great time, right? Like you see degradation during that time. And again, sort of later in the day, so you can see it just as a user or whatever, the good times and the bad times, right? Dave, you've talked a lot about like customer lifecycle management, right? And this kind of concept or whatever, specifically sort of for service providers and such to kind of, that start to finish customer life cycle. Could you sort of walk through that for the people that are listening and how sort of we can sort of help with that as well?
Absolutely. So, talking to Ryan and his team and the different MSPs that we have that through our Mitel partnership, I see a lot of what I call, lifecycle management interaction. And I think the first step, and Ryan talked about this, is the pre-site qualification. So just because you have a customer that calls up and says, I want to move to the cloud, I've got, 10 people and I would like you to ship me some phones, and away you go. Well, that's that's great.
It doesn't always work like
great
that.
Opportunity. But if that service isn't good from out of the gate, you're going to, again, spend a lot of time troubleshooting, and eventually you're going to have churn, right? They're going to move on to another RingCentral or an 8x8. So the UC Score tool that Ryan talked about, again, it gives you that pre-site qualification. It's simple. There's no download. There's no executable. It's web-based. It runs over WebRTC, so you can send a link to a customer, and with their browser, you can get a very good snapshot as to how their network or their internet connection is going to perform in a cloud-based UC deployment. And there may just be some businesses that, some business you don't want, right? And I think, Ryan, you can attest to that. There are some customers that you just don't want because they are going to drag you through the mud, and eventually it's going to cost you more than, what they're paying. So the next piece, as I said, once you make that pre-qualification and you bring them on as a customer, then you start to gather that real-time data. So I just call this the sort of the monitoring stage. You deploy our probe and we start to collect data, and you can start to proactively report to them where their challenges are. And sort of, hand in hand with that is the analysis. So as I said, regularly doing updates with the customer, regularly informing them on the analysis that you're doing on collecting that data. So you sort of go, pre-site qualification, monitor, analyze, and then give Ryan and his team some tools for troubleshooting. And that's really where the rubber hits the road, because as we've just said, you cannot send a technician to site. They'll be turned away, right? Even with a mask and gloves, social distancing, you cannot. So we're going to give Ryan a bunch of tools that he can run from his data center, from his NOC, to take that customer's problem right to the edge and try and fix that problem. And then the last piece is optimize. And that is where we do things like application prioritization, where we can actually go into the customer's network and say, listen, I want to prioritize voice traffic above all else. Facebook, people are on YouTube. That's all data that can be pushed to the bottom of the heap. Yeah. And I think with those 5 steps, I think you can really manage that customer's life cycle from beginning when you onboard them and take them right through their journey to the cloud and make sure that they're satisfied with your service.
Yeah. I'm sure, Ryan, for you, I see you nodding your head. Is there anything sort of you want to add to that?
I mean, I think Dave hit it on the head. I mean, it is those 5 steps, those 5 life cycles of a customer. It's a proactive way, and that's key today, now more than ever, to make sure that you're ahead of the curve, right? From pre-site to, monitoring and analyzing, and then, acting on things. Sometimes all of those 5 things can happen before the customer even knows there's an issue. And the only way to do that is if you deploy some tools, you have some real-time tools that are constantly watching and constantly monitoring and making sure, potentially correcting it, a problem before it happens, sending it down another path, on the fly, because there's one path that's no longer there, or it's not a quality connection like the other one is. So yeah, I think Dave hit it on the head. It's completely accurate now more than ever. And I think you're going to see it going forward. I think the light at the end of the tunnel is coming. I think people are starting to sense that and see that, thankfully. I think people have their baseline of what they accept, what they think is okay as far as the ability to be mobile, the ability to have quality voice is different. I think you're going to only see more people push and need and desire for that quality all the time, And so the things that Martello provides us help us do that every single day and keep us ahead of those new normal curves. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. And again, like you said, it is kind of the new normal, right? And going back or whatever, whenever that time comes, it's not going to be going back to the same place, right? So I think that's a good point. David, looked like you wanted to say something, or you're...
Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat now, right? And I think we need to utilize whatever tools we can and grasp onto them, because I know we think that we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we could all go back to work for another couple of months and this could, we could be all back here. God forbid, right? But we need to be prepared. I think this is what's just taught us all a lesson, right? That we need to be prepared and we need to be nimble, and that's going to be the key to staying ahead of the competition.
I think that's a really good point for sure. But yeah, I think exactly like you said, there may be sort of ebbs and flows, but this is kind of the new normal, and having those sort of, tools and resources in place to sort of move forward is a good thing. Even though it might have been sort of difficult to get to that point at the time. So I want to thank you both for your time today. I know you guys are both very busy, and it was great to catch up and go through some of these questions. And I think, it's a fascinating time, as I think somebody said at the beginning, it is unlike anything we've sort of ever gone through before. And, maintaining those service quality levels is a challenge, but I think that there's a lot of options to kind of rise to those challenges. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Cheers. Bye. Have a great day, everybody.